Now, let's turn our attention to working our escapes on the underhook side. So we've been focusing up until this point in the series on working the overhook side. This is the side that most people who are on the back are looking to take you to because it brings their, it puts their strangle arm closer to your neck, okay, in a way, right? Because that bottom arm is on the bottom and you can't go any further down, really. That arm is waiting, and so it's very easy to slip that arm inside if you don't have any sense of what you're supposed to be doing. Working off of the underhook side, though, in many ways is actually more challenging than working off of the overhook side, okay? So what you'll find, especially people who are more attuned to back attacks, people who have more experience, more advanced training, or a better sense of what to do on the back will often take you to the overhook side, the underhook side. Why is that? Okay, well, first let's look at some differences between over and underhook sides just so you can understand. Now, all of the escapes that we do, or most of the escapes that we do on the overhook side, we can do on the underhook side, but there are a couple of key differences that you have to keep in mind when you're working off of this side, okay? So the first is that when it comes to, as we've discussed, gripping is critical, but when we're working on the underhook side here, our primary and secondary hands switch roles. So the primary and secondary hands, defensive hands, are relative. They're not like absolute. So when you're on this side, Placido's strangle arm is his top arm. Okay, so this is the top arm, this is the strangle arm. That makes our primary defensive hand our bottom hand. Okay, here. That means that our top hand is the secondary hand. When we were on the other side, okay, or if he switches here, you'll see that his bottom arm is the strangle arm. That makes our top arm the primary defensive hand, okay? So when you're working from the underhook side, you have to know that your main defensive tool is the bottom arm, okay? And that the top arm is only the secondary, okay? So that's one important difference. Okay, the next difference is when your partner is here, they have a specific advantage. Okay, the advantage is that when he's here, he can strip my grip, okay, and he can control this hand, and he can trap my top arm, gaining a position where he has both of my arms trapped and a free hand to strangle with, okay? This leaves us with really only our chin to defend the strangle. That's not true from here, okay? Because if he goes to trap my top arm here, okay, even if he traps the primary arm, we still have the secondary arm to defend with. Okay, so it's much more difficult for him to trap both of your arms when you're on the overhook side. It's much easier for your partner to trap both of your arms, okay, one with their leg and one with their hand, okay, when you're on the underhook side. So hopefully that's not too confusing, but there are some advantages and some disadvantages, all right? What we really need to keep in mind as defensive players, number one, your bottom arm is the primary defensive hand. And number two, you have to be very conscious about your partner trapping your arms. We're going to cover how to free a trapped arm a little bit later on in the video, but this is just something that's very important, okay? Now, because you're in this position and because your bottom arm is trapped, hitting a headlock escape the way that we did when we were on the other side is almost impossible. It's very, very difficult for you to get your arm into the proper position to wrap your partner's head. So for that reason, when you're on the underhook side, you will be doing almost no headlock style escapes. Almost all of our escapes from here will involve us cutting the elbow. Now the good news is that when you're here, cutting the elbow is a much easier job. Okay, and the reason is because even as Placido goes to hold on tight here with his hands and draw his hands up here, that once we begin to move our body forward, rounding our body, we can take our head in front of our partner's head. That's going to make it easier for you to put your head on the floor, shoulders on the floor, and now when you turn your hips, your elbow can slide in between you and your partner much more easily, okay? So when we're here and our partner has us in this position, the first thing that we need to pay attention to is our primary hand finding our partner's thumb, our secondary hand controlling our partner's wrist here, or their forearm, And then from here, taking our head forwards. As Placido goes to keep me here, even if he really works hard to keep me here, it's very difficult for him to follow my head position. And now from here, when the head goes from one side to the other, it's the strangle is almost out of reach for him, okay? His strangle arm and his head are on the same side. When that happens, it's almost impossible for him to finish in a conventional fashion. We can, on the other hand, turn our hips towards our partner and begin to slide our elbow between us. Now, from here, we're into a frame. As your partner goes to rise, if they do manage to mount, you're in perfect position to hit a knee elbow escape, okay? If they throw the leg over the top here, you can often simply feed your partner into a position like this, and now you can go into all of your various half guard attacks, okay? So a couple of key differences. Our major escape from this position is going to involve us cutting the elbow. To cut the elbow, you're going to find your primary hand and secondary hand positions. You're going to fold your body to bring your head down towards your knees, and then you're going to look to create a misalignment with your hips and your shoulders. Once that happens, dropping the elbow into position is going to allow you to create a frame. That frame is going to provide space, and into that space, you can either knee elbow escape, enter into ashigarami, or enter into the half guard.